Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're putting on our security expert hats and focusing strictly on governance and risk management within the software supply chain. Your deployment pipeline is the absolute heart of your software delivery, right? But here's the thing, without pipeline native governance, it's also your biggest liability. We're going to explore exactly how to secure that supply chain by integrating real, enforceable risk management directly into your automated workflows. Let's get into it. Here's our game plan for today. We'll be covering the supply chain threat, zero trust and policy as code, enforcing SBO policies, high-risk manual approvals, and finally, building the audit-ready pipeline. Section 1, the supply chain threat, or as I like to call it, the attack surface you don't control. So let's ask a really tough question right out of the gate. Is your signed artifact actually trustworthy? Honestly, it's a harsh reality to face. As security folks, we have to admit that the attack surface we don't control is almost always larger than the one we do. Think back to the infamous SolarWinds attack. The build system itself was compromised. Malicious code was injected into trusted software way before the signature was even applied. It's like locking your front door but leaving the back window wide open. A digital signature simply verifies the signer. That's it. It says absolutely nothing about the actual integrity of the code inside the build. So a signed artifact isn't inherently trustworthy, it's literally just signed. Wow, okay, get this, 48%. According to recent DevOps studies, nearly half, 48% of security teams openly acknowledge that they are lagging behind in software bill of materials, or SBOM, implementation. And why does this matter so much? Well, application code bases today consist of, maybe less than 15% proprietary logic. The entire rest of the pie is open source dependencies and third-party container images. If you lag in SBOM adoption, you basically have untracked mystery components living in your CI/CD pipelines. That is a massive governance blind spot, and you better believe adversaries are actively targeting it. Moving to Section 2, Zero Trust and Policy as Code. We're shifting from trust and verify to verify, then trust. To close that giant blind spot we just talked about, we absolutely have to transition to a zero-trust architecture right inside our CI/CD environments. Zero trust in CI/CD essentially takes the core principle of never trust, always verify, and applies it to, everything. Every code commit, every pipeline run, every single access request. You drastically shrink your attack surface by demanding authentication, authorization, and validation for every action, totally regardless of whether it originates inside or outside your corporate network. Think about the old legacy approach versus where modern risk management is heading today. Notice how the primary goal has completely shifted. We've moved from just awareness, running a scan and just piling up Jira tickets in a backlog that nobody reads, to actual prevention and intent enforcement. In the battle days, policies were literally just PDFs sitting on a wiki somewhere, and enforcement happened during this painful post-deployment manual audit. Today, enforcement happens right inside the CI/CD pipeline using admission controllers. If the code isn't compliant, the build simply breaks, period. And the secret sauce powering that modern approach is Policy as Code, or PAC. Policy as Code is exactly what it sounds like, the practice of defining your governance, compliance, and security rules as executable code. Think of tools like Open Policy Agent, or OPA. Instead of just crossing your fingers and hoping a developer remembers to check some security PDF, Policy as Code automatically evaluates infrastructure changes and artifact contents on the fly. It takes friendly security advice and transforms it into a hard build break. Section 3, Enforcing those SBOM policies. This is all about automated governance in the pipeline. Okay, so if you really want to mitigate supply chain threats, you have to enforce policies against your SBOMs. It's not just a document, it's data. Here is the exact 4-step playbook to configure this automated enforcement. First, you create an OPA policy set that perfectly aligns with your org's risk tolerance. Second, you write the specific policy definitions, for instance, completely banning packages with known critical CVEs. Third, you drop a policy enforcement step directly into your pipeline to evaluate the newly generated SBOM against your rules. And fourth, you view the violations and configure the pipeline to either issue a loud warning or, much better, terminate the build entirely. The key here is understanding the logic criteria a software component has to meet to actually pass this evaluation. It is incredibly strict, as it should be. The component must not be on your deny list. It must be explicitly on your allow list. And finally, if your policy has multiple sections, say one checking for secure suppliers and another checking for restricted open source licenses, the component must pass absolutely all of them. If it fails even one of these logical checks, that artifact is dead in the water. It does not move forward. This brilliantly illustrates how we apply these SBOM gates across the whole software lifecycle. In the CI, or build phase, the gate acts like a bouncer. It's all about prevention, blocking any dependency on a deny list from ever entering the compiled build in the first place. But then we shift to the CD, or deploy phase. Here, the gate acts as an auditor. It checks the SBOM's cryptographic attestation, verifying signatures from tools like Sigstore or Cosign to mathematically guarantee that the artifact you're about to push to production is the exact same one that was scanned and approved back in the build phase. No tampering allowed whatsoever.
Part 4. High-risk manual approvals. Because sometimes you just need human governance and risk management.
Now, don't get me wrong, standard automated policy as code gates are amazing for low-risk changes. But if you're deploying to a highly critical production environment or dealing with heavily regulated data like HIPAA or PCI DSS, you absolutely still need humans in the loop. High-risk deployments require human judgment. Manual activities literally hit the brakes and pause the release execution entirely. They wait for designated human intervention to provide validation checkpoints and, this is huge for your compliance teams, auditable evidence collection.
So how does that actually work? Here is the structured execution flow you need to configure for manual approvals. First up, activity activation. The release hits a manual gate, pauses, and all dependent downstream activities are blocked. Second, owner notification. Automated alerts instantly ping the designated approvers via email, Slack, Teams, whatever you use. Third, user action. This is where the magic happens. The approver can't just blindly click approve. They have to provide inputs, actually upload evidence, like a compliance doc or test screenshot, and write out their justification. Finally, activity completion. The pipeline logs all that precious evidence and then either resumes if approved or fails if rejected.
What kinds of manual gates are real-world organizations using? You've got quite a few flavors. There's code quality and build approvals, which are usually your peer reviews. Environment readiness checks. Product owner sign-offs to make sure the business is actually aligned with the release. QA sign-offs for manual exploratory testing. And finally, the heavy hitters for risk management, security and compliance approvals, and the formal Change Advisory Board, or CAB, risk review. Setting these up ensures you maintain serious cross-functional oversight, especially when the blast radius of a change is massive. Bringing it all together in Section 5, the audit-ready pipeline, seamlessly combining those automated and manual gates. Imagine a world with no more panic-driven audit prep. That's what an audit-ready pipeline gives you: continuous compliance. It automatically captures all your logs, your evidence files, session info, and every single human approval justification in real time. Because all of this is scooped up exactly as the deployment is happening, it completely eliminates the need to scramble when the auditors show up. This architecture guarantees that your organization can always hand an auditor a complete, cryptographically verified story of exactly what happened, when it happened, and exactly why. I absolutely love this quote from our source material: treat cybersecurity governance as a product you run, not a project you finish. It really hits the nail on the head. DevSecOps isn't a checkbox. You don't just flip the switch on an SBOM scanner and declare victory. It requires an ongoing commitment. You're constantly tuning your OPA policies, adjusting your manual approval thresholds, and really treating your pipeline security as a living, breathing product. So let me leave you with this final, provocative thought to take back to your teams today. If your pipeline deployed to production right now, could you prove exactly who approved it and verify mathematically exactly what was inside it? If your answer is no, well, it's definitely time to start building some enforceable gates. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.